the goings on and how he has to administer the one of the Kankakee gathering places in cyberspace. It's like the Court and Schuyler of cyberspace, is what he had. And Bob Schneider, thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Well, thank you for being here, and I'm happy to be here because the heat is on.
Yeah,
the heat,
it is on.
And it feels okay in here.
Yes,
but,
it does.
You know, you're somebody who grew up here in Kankakee.
Yes, I did.
And then you haven't lived here for a long time.
I haven't lived here for many decades, and went to California and went to Washington, D.C., spent basically more than 30 years away, and in my mom's later years, started coming back more often. And now I'm here quite a bit.
Okay.
So.
But you're connected to things going on in Kankakee all the time because of this Facebook group that you kind of stumbled upon.
Yeah, I did, and I was on Facebook. I had been asked by some political people to join Facebook to try to get basically the Tea Party people onto a track they wanted them to get on.
Really?
And, politics was my business for 30 years, so I agreed to do this, and I realized that group wasn't getting on any track at all.
Yeah,
they're off the tracks.
Yeah, they're off the tracks.
And you're not going to convince them of anything.
And I'm not going to convince them otherwise. And so, I was looking around and I thought, look, instead of doing this for politics, why don't we do it for something good?
Mm-hmm.
And I stumbled across this Kankakee group, and literally when I came in, it said, we no longer have an administrator. You're it. Click to accept.
Whoa.
And I did.
I've never come into a group like
that.
Yeah, and Todd Boudreau, who also administers it with me, I guess got the same message about the same time, because all of a sudden he and I are administrators.
And is he somebody you know?
No, I didn't know him. I didn't know him from Adam, and he's a Bradley guy, or originally from Bradley.
Yeah.
Lives down in the Champaign area now. And, we got in this group, and everybody's calling each other names and, just talking awful. And somebody asked me who I was, and I said, I'm the guy that can block you. And I did.
And you then did. Where does that come from? Where does that negativity, we see that, here and there, especially with social media, but I don't really run across people like that in everyday
interact.
life.
Well, actually, if you've been in big cities and you've seen people standing, screaming at strangers on the street, a lot of it is the same mentality.
Yeah.
And of course the anonymity. You can be a big tough guy.
Right. When you don't have to face
no
to
threat.
face.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Where does this animosity towards it? This can't be specific to Kankakee, and I know that now that you administer this Facebook group, that you really that's not what this group is about. It's about kind of the nostalgia and sharing stories.
And it really does run the gamut of nostalgia, looking at the future, interesting stories of the past.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of old friends that haven't seen each other in decades connect there. And every once in a while, it's like, someone says, oh, my God, I know you. And it's, how are you? And remember when we did thus and so?
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you see old friends connect. And it's really fun. But we get people from all over the world. We've had people from as far away as Africa who lived in Kankakee who love it.
Yeah.
And they come back, and nobody comes to, talk down to the people from home. It's people there sharing experiences. And you see a lot of people that say, hey, here's what worked for us in our community that maybe you aren't doing in Kankakee. Yeah. And also saying, we wish we had some of the things in our community now that we had in Kankakee. And number one thing that everybody talks about is they miss Yohnka hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
Well, and we can talk more about the Yohnka hot dogs as the program continues. When we're going to hear from Joshua Carmen in just a second. Josh is going to have a recap of some of the news stories we've been following this morning. We'll do that right after this.
You want to work out. Why Fitness Premier? Ask Andy Curtis, General Manager of Fitness Premier in Beach Air.
It is 8:15. You're tuned in to Talk AM 1320 WKAN.
joined back with Bob Schneider. Bob Schneider, we're talking to administrator of the You're Probably from Kankakee,
Well, I think, Allison, now this is where Bob is going to say, I didn't start this group because you probably from Kankakee if.
Yes.
And you seem like a really well-spoken, educated man who probably wouldn't say you probably from Kankakee if.
Oh, I just noticed that.
I happen to know what a verb is for. I do, seriously.
Can you change this?
No, I can't. And here's the problem
This is embarrassing.
With Facebook, it is once a group has 100 people in it, the name is locked in.
Oh.
And so there we are. But the guy,
You got to be careful about that. You got to think about that.
The guy, what can I say? The guy that started it probably was not, the pride and joy of School District 111. What can I say?
Or, you probably started on a whim. You just, you probably. And
well, I think he tried. I think he was trying to do a comedy thing.
Okay.
And, when we got there wasn't much comedy going on.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is I think this is interesting, and of course this is one of the many things. And you stumbled across this because you were just searching Kankakee and found it.
Yes.
And as you said right before we went to news, that Facebook gave you a message saying you are now the new administrator. Press OK to continue.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were the chump who did.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, come on, I'll click yes, just put it up there. And so I did, and so did Todd Boudreau. And we saw people in there, and they were, busy hating everything and everyone. And I said, you got to knock this off. What good does blaming people do with anything? They said, who are you? And I said, well, I'm the guy that can block you. And I blocked a couple of them.
Yeah.
And suddenly behavior changed immediately. And I think, early on there were some people that are just so frustrated they were looking at it as an outlet for their own frustrations.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've tried to do is we've tried to keep the environment very positive and talk about how Kankakee used to be and our memories, growing up, which are wonderful, even if they weren't at the time.
Yeah.
As time marches on, they become wonderful.
They become wonderful.
Isn't that funny how memories work that way?
And it's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. So I was kind of just tooling around and seeing, okay, so for example, and we don't have to focus on this, but I think this is interesting, the where did Kankakee go wrong? And this particular member talks about his theory is that the downtown shopping was diminished years ago when they had parking meters.
Yes.
Now, this is an interesting theory, but I don't think I can agree with it.
Well, I can't agree with it either. I mean, there was a nationwide phenomenon known as the shopping mall.
Yeah.
And that's where downtown went wrong, is the mall was invented elsewhere.
Yeah.
And came here. And, you can see it in Meadowview, where we sit right now.
Yeah.
Was hard on downtown.
Mm-hmm.
But not just our downtown. This was how
This was
everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah. Once people realized, wait, we can build something and put big parking lots and it'll become more convenient for people to go to.
Right.
Exactly.
They won't have to find a place and walk a few blocks around these
They
weird
can
old buildings.
Park once and then just there you go.
Why are we sticking with this old grid of a downtown when we can just go do something new?
Yeah, we don't have, and not only that, in Kankakee, let's face it, they never really did figure out how to time the traffic signals. I mean, to this day, it's a nightmare driving with the traffic signals in Kankakee.
Well, those of us who do it enough kind of figure it out, like, oh, don't go that way. Why would you ever go that way?
Yeah, exactly.
But the change from downtown shopping in towns in all over America, including Kankakee, to strip malls like Meadowview, and then from there it went to indoor malls.
Yes.
And now it's getting back to strip malls again, it seems.
We're going from the big mega malls down to strip malls.
Yeah.
And people are back driving. Who knows? Maybe downtown will come back in again. I mean, it's a cycle. But, you take a look at towns like Naperville, which when the downturn occurred, it was very similar to Kankakee. It was about 27,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And they took a very different path than what Kankakee took. And they've got a charming downtown, but they also have 150,000 people living there.
Yeah.
And Naperville figured out early on that the old way of doing things with heavy manufacturing is gone, and you had to concentrate on bringing in the service industry, international companies, and people who basically were startup companies. And a lot of those companies that grew, that made Naperville the sprawling traffic mess it is today, but prosperous traffic mess it is today, were startups.
Yeah.
And there isn't any reason why, and that's still going on. And there isn't any reason at all why this town couldn't do that now. And, people say, well, the high-tech boom's over. Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
It is absolutely not true. The only constant is change, and you've got to be able to look forward and say, what's the next change going to be, and how am I going to ride with it? And that's something. In this group, I see people really wanting to do something, and they don't have a channel to do it. And now with social media, they've got a voice, and they're speaking their voice. And leaders in this community can look at that, and you can organize people for tremendous good. And that's what we're trying to do, but we're not trying to tell them what to do. We're trying to work with everybody to think through the problems and take their own course of action and do it in an intelligent manner.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. We had a guy said, we had a thread going about what will it take to revitalize Kankakee. And he said an interesting thing. He said, Kankakee should have a good indoor shooting range. And, everybody, somebody wrote me and they said, so-and-so wrote this. How is that going to revitalize Kankakee? And I said, and I wrote the guy back and I said, don't say anything to him about it. We're going to go with this because it's a great idea.
Yeah.
But what he doesn't seem to understand is he can do it.
Yeah.
He can start it. And if you take a lot of people taking a small action, over time, it becomes a big action. And that's really the goal of this social media group, is to get people to the point where they can say, hey, I can do something and take the risk.
Well, and I think that happens a lot where people say, well, this one thing that people are working on, what good is that going to do? Well, that's their thing. If everyone else did their thing too, and it was all a positive thing and worked in the same kind of general good direction, those are all good things.
I'll give you an example of one thing that became very big. In the 1960s, there was a doctor in town by the name of Morris Lang, and Dr. Lang started something called Riverside Hospital.
Yeah.
Because basically Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Irwin controlled St. Mary's and controlled the competition, and Maury was not happy about that. Maury and Anita Lang were my parents' dearest friends, and so he said, I'm going to start something called Riverside Hospital. People are telling me I'm nuts. And my dad said, who was very much a forward thinker, he said, Maury, this town's going to grow. We need more than one medical center, and competition's a good thing. And so they went ahead and they started it. And look at it now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's phenomenal. That really is, it's a great hospital. I mean, it's not a good hospital. It's not a teaching hospital, but it's a great hospital.
Oh, yeah. And it is now, it's going to be on the city council agenda on Monday night. For the next year, the street will be renamed on Wall Street in front of Riverside to Riverside Way in celebration of their 50 years celebrating this year.
Incredible.
Making me feel old because I remember this.
Oh. Well, we're talking with Bob Schneider, and we're talking this morning about the Facebook group. You're probably from Kankakee if you ... And Bob, one of the administrators, in addition to, of course, several other things, and you've had an illustrious career. We were talking before over the national news break about kind of how you ended up leaving Kankakee.
Yeah, well, it was actually a day like today, and I had just gotten out of school, and I had driven up to Chicago for a job interview, and the heater on the car would not get above